Following the ANC's decision to close ranks around the president, the rand fell by nearly 1% against the US dollar to about 13.73, effectively adding to the losses that have wiped out all the currency's gains so far in 2017. Remember, at one point, the rand was the best performing currency on the continent. Earlier on, I spoke to economist Lesiba Mothata about the investment opportunities available in South Africa. I started by asking him if the ANC could recall Mr. Mbeki. Why can't they recall Mr. Zuma?
The idea is that recall, which happened in 2008, was very destructive, and it was undesired in the history of an organization that is more than 100 years old. It was unprecedented, and there doesn't seem to be enough desire to repeat the same thing. Notwithstanding that 2008, it was just around the global financial crisis, and the economic consequences were felt directly thereafter. There is now no need, there is no desire from the internal structures of the ANC to repeat what I'll call the same mistake.
Indeed. Let's talk about policy continuity, because that's been a theme ever since the 30th of March when Pravin Gordhan and his deputy were fired. Now we understand that the Director General of the Treasury will also be leaving as well. How much should we read into that?
Yeah, so it is quite unfortunate that a man who has served more than a decade in the National Treasury and also as a public servant serving South Africans more than 20 years is leaving. But on the other side, it's just quite understandable. After such a turner, he has really contributed significantly. It looks like he feels, and he explained himself at length. There was a press conference that happened earlier in the weekend that showed that he had said, "I've done my course. South Africa, look at me. You cannot discredit my contribution because it's undisputed. And the hard work he has given to this country has been immense." It is just coming at a time where, admittedly, he has seen 4 finance ministers within a period of 18 months.
Indeed. So on balance, therefore, if I'm a bond investor and I'm looking at South African, say, 10-year bonds, I shouldn't be too disturbed by this current volatility, therefore.
Indeed. I mean, so the conundrum that is happening in South Africa is that which is felt by many on the ground, ordinary South Africans, is not expressed in financial markets. On the contrary to how people feel at home, the markets are sanguine. Bond markets actually are beginning to rally. Today, more particularly, we have seen bond yield having shot above 9, now actually retreating slightly below 9%. And this is telling a very interesting story.
Indeed, but square this circle for me, because for those of us who are outside South Africa, we see all these headlines from Nkandla to the row about the nuclear spending program, to the concerns about whether or not fiscal policy will remain on the same path. But yet bond investors are basically voting with their wallets, and they're saying, we don't really care about anything that's going on the political space. Everything's fine. I mean, it sounds like quite a contradiction here.
It is a really peculiar situation. It is peculiar. But you see, these bond investors get it. If you were to be honest and look at the detail of what's happened in this country, it's not catastrophic. It's not even comparable to what happened in Brazil. It's not comparable to what happened in Russia when it got downgraded. Even upon studying other emerging market countries, which got downgraded to junk, it's incomparable. And why is it so? It's because what we find is that the strength of the institutions in South Africa remains. We have a solid central bank that contributes positively to how the economy is run. Even with the machinations around the leadership of the National Treasury, the machine, the structure, the infrastructure of the National Treasury remains intact, because South Africa continues to have a medium-term budget policy framework. That means they construct fiscal policy for the 3-year term without changing it dramatically along the way.